Hello, government students. Earlier, I provided a little assignment for you to look over some social media posts that have shown up on the internet in the last 5 or 6 years. And I asked you to make a guess as to whether or not you believe that these posts were true stories, or if the information provided on them, the quotations that are provided on them, are true quotes or citations. And with that, let's see how you did, and I'm going to give you the real story on all of these little stories and memes. First one is a rather heartwarming story. A little boy was desperately ill, and he needed to have a life-saving airline trip across the country. And they couldn't get him on any commercial flights because in order to keep him alive on that long flight, they had to have a lot of medical equipment on the airplane. And none of the commercial airlines felt they could actually provide for that medical equipment on the plane, that they would not have room for it. And they just said that they couldn't carry this little boy. And it looked like the little boy might die. And when Donald Trump, according to this story, heard about this, he came to the rescue, and he has his own private airplane, and he allowed that medical equipment on his airplane, and they flew that little boy across the country at Donald Trump's expense, and his life was saved. Is this a true story or not, do you think? Well, the fact of the matter is, this is a true story. Now, what they don't tell you is that the story came out on the internet. It was publicized back in 2016 when Donald Trump was first running for president. However, the actual event happened in 1988. So they don't tell you this happened like 18 years before, or 20 years, almost before the actual event. But it is a true story. So kudos to Donald Trump, at least when he was a younger man, for coming to the rescue of that little boy. Next one. Little salty language in this one. I apologize for that. But we have here an obituary of Thomas P. Trump, died at the age of 88. And he is a cousin of Donald Trump. Well, actually, he's not. Donald Trump does not have a cousin by the name of Thomas P. Trump. This little obituary is fake. And a clue, of course, would be down here, this little logo, the people who put this thing out. Yes, this is a fake obituary. The photograph that you see there was actually grabbed off of Flickr. Flickr is a social media site used by photographers. And this photo of an elderly gentleman was simply grabbed at random off of Flickr and posted onto this, and they said this was Thomas P. Trump. Of course, it was not. So this one is fake. Next one. First of all, let me explain, in case you don't know, what this reference here is to Fauci. This refers to Dr. Anthony Fauci, who is the chief epidemiologist for the Centers for Disease Control in the United States, a function of our federal government. It's Dr. Fauci who was the primary man that our government went to with the outbreak of COVID-19. It's Dr. Fauci and his team who suggested the mitigation efforts to slow the spread of COVID-19. And that included things like the lockdowns and mask wearing and that sort of stuff. And as you know, people got rather tired of all the lockdowns and the mitigations, and a lot of people started criticizing Dr. Fauci for suggesting all these things and blaming Dr. Fauci for the problems of COVID-19. The idea being that COVID-19 was actually no big deal, and of course it is a big deal. But a lot of people, just out of frustration, started questioning Fauci and doubting his advice. And then they put this meme out here by the 18th century French philosopher Voltaire. To learn who rules over you, simply find out who you are not allowed to criticize. Of course, the reference here, who you are not allowed to criticize, is to Fauci. So we're not allowed to criticize Fauci, for he is science. And of course, then the implication is that Fauci is ruling over us and we can't criticize him. Well, the fact of the matter is, Voltaire never said this. This is not a true quote of Voltaire. This meme was put out simply to rile up some antagonism and emotional antagonism towards Dr. Fauci and specifically, and then in general towards COVID-19 and all of the mitigation efforts to slow down the spread of that disease. So this one is fake. moving on. Stockton, California. This was put out in 2018, shortly after the school shooting at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in Florida. This was one of those terrible school shootings where about 15 to 20 students were murdered. After that event, schools all over the United States experienced on one single day, at a particular time of the day, all over the United States, high schools had walkouts. Students in high schools all over the country had a short walk out of their classrooms in protest and in protest of the school shootings and in honor of the victims of the shootings, specifically at the Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in Florida. Even Rockford Lutheran here had a walkout. Our administration was happy to support that walkout. And a lot of the high school kids walked out to the football field, and a couple of students gave short speeches. And there was even some prayer for the victims of that event and families of the children who were killed by the murderer at the high school. At any rate, following that nationwide lockout, it says here that some kids in Stockton, California took place in the walkout, and got violent. They vandalized vehicles and assaulted a police officer, took his baton. And basically this is saying, way to go, kids. You're proving our point. Guns are not a problem in America. We have a morality problem, moral problem. Well, did this happen in Stockton, California? It sort of did happen. Now, this particular description of the event in Stockton makes it look like a pretty serious event. In reality, it was about 3 students who went out in the walkout, and they got out their car keys and started keying a police car, scratching the car up a little bit. When the police came over to the kids to tell them to stop, a little scuffle broke out, and one of the kids did in fact take an officer's baton. And there was a little bit of fighting, and then it broke up. The kids were charged with a relatively minor offense, and the situation was over. What this doesn't tell you is A, it was a pretty minor event, and B, after this event happened, the student council at the Stockton, California High School got together and wrote letters of apology to the police department of Stockton, California, and they also wrote letters of apology to the students of Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in Florida. They apologized because the acts that happened in Stockton tainted the memory of the events to honor those students who were murdered at the school. So those who put this meme together exaggerate the bad that happened, and they don't even mention at all the follow-up, which was good, the apologies, which were good. And this is a classic strategy or method of propagandists. You only tell one side of the story. Maybe you exaggerate one side of the story, and you don't tell the other side of the story at all. That's propaganda. Next up. Okay, this is from CNBC, which is a cable news outlet. Says here that Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor tests positive for COVID-19 despite triple vaccination, diligent masking, and working from home. Yes, we do have a Supreme Court Justice by the name of Sonia Sotomayor. She has received triple vaccination. Justice Sotomayor is a diabetic, and as such, she is at a high risk for complications from COVID, so she has received not 1, but 2 boosters in addition to the initial vaccination. She has been a diligent masker, and she has been working from home. However, Justice Sotomayor has never tested positive for COVID-19. So that aspect of this is a lie. Well, you might be asking, well, gosh, it's on CNBC. Are they lying then? Well, this is a fake screenshot. Whoever put this together simply went onto the CNBC website. They copied the logo off of that website. They copied this little bit here, this link graphic, and this is therefore a dead link. It doesn't work, and this was just copied and pasted onto this internet meme. So be careful when you see screenshots, because screenshots on the internet are easy to fabricate, as this was. So this one is fake. Okay, here's another interesting one. Donald Trump at dinner with his family. So get this, last night taxpayers paid President Donald Trump to feed Donald Trump at a Donald Trump restaurant in a Donald Trump hotel. Are you outraged yet? The ways in which this administration is funneling monies to the Trump businesses is nauseating, and they aren't even trying to hide it. Okay, well, this is a real picture. However, this picture was taken about 8 months before Donald Trump became president. This picture was taken, I believe, at Ivanka Trump's birthday party. And again, he was not president when this happened. So this is a fake meme. Of course, one big clue of that would be who put this out, Democratic moms. So obviously this is not a very reliable source for information on the Republican president. So this is fake. And incidentally, when a president of the United States goes out to dinner at a private restaurant, the taxpayers do not pay for that dinner. The president pays for his own dinners when he goes out to eat with his family. Okay, here's another one. Facial recognition firm claims Antifa infiltrated Trump protesters who stormed the Capitol. This came out very shortly after the January 6, 2021 insurrection at the Capitol. Just so you know, if you don't, Antifa stands for anti-fascist. Antifa is a very loose collection of people who will occasionally gather to confront, sometimes violently confront, far right-wing demonstrators like the KKK, Ku Klux Klan. If you have a KKK gathering or some kind of fascistic type group who gather at a rally or protest, sometimes groups that call themselves Antifa will also show up at those rallies and confront the right-wingers, and occasionally that can get a little bit violent. So here we're saying that Antifa was involved in the January 6 riots at the Capitol. That was largely blamed, that event, on Trump supporters. Antifa would most definitely not be Trump supporters. So is this true? Did Antifa get identified among the rioters? According to the Washington Times, they did. Washington Times is a legitimate news source. It's a very conservative newspaper, but it is at least a legitimate news source. And this did appear on the Times. However, about 2 or 3 hours after this showed up on the Washington Times website, the Times rescinded the story. They determined that the story was not true, and they retracted it. The bad thing about this is that this story was picked up by a lot of Republican members of Congress, and they actually used this story on the floors of the Congress in speeches, claiming that the riots at the Capitol were partially, at least, instigated by members of Antifa. They would be, far left-wingers. And it wasn't true. They picked up this story from the Washington Times, and they used it on the floors of Congress. But when the Times rescinded this story, the members of Congress remained silent. So that's unfortunate that a lie was used on the floors of our Congress. And the last one, we have George Washington. 2 quotes from Washington. When government takes away citizens' right to bear arms, it becomes the citizens' duty to take away the government's right to govern. And the second one, it's impossible to rightly govern a nation without God and the Bible. Both of these quotes attributed to George Washington. According to the Mount Vernon Museum folks, who are the experts on George Washington, Mount Vernon being George Washington's home, he never said either of these. There is no record of George Washington ever making either of these 2 quotes, so these 2 memes are false. Why would someone put this out? Well, George Washington is very highly respected in America. People who would put this first one out are people who obviously do not want any kind of gun control regulations. So they're saying George Washington would have disapproved. And also there's an element within our country who like to claim that the United States is a Christian nation. And again, they would use this as evidence to support that claim. And they'll attribute it to Washington. Again, George Washington did not say either of these, so both of these claims, both of these memes are untrue. So that's the story on what y'all looked at on our social media. And I believe you have or will have more to do related to social media and fake news in Canvas. You guys have a great day.